Hi, everybody. I am going to be starting to teach the Tanya of the day. This is something that's really exciting for me. I plan to bring this over to a Zoom space so that we can kind of have like a more intimate setting and people can really go back and forth afterwards. But I woke up this morning and I said, you know what? I have not yet put it out there. I've not yet invited people to a Zoom space. Let me go ahead and get started and just do this live. And because I know that so many of us want to learn and then we just somehow don't fit it into our lives. And so I said, you know what, let me just go live. I have not yet learned the Tanya, so I'm going to be learning it straight from along with you. I'm doing it from the Practical Tanya. This is one of my favorite books on the Tanya. This is something that I recommended to a client of mine when she was really seeking on her spiritual journey, really wanting to connect with Hashem, connect with Torah in a much deeper, more intimate way. And she said to me that it was like life transforming. Like I remember when I had suggested it to her, she said that that was probably the best thing that I ever suggested to her. And so I'm just really excited to do this. And what's super exciting for me is that when I opened up and looked at the Tanya of the day today, it's such hashgacha pratis because this is like one of my favorite topics ever. It's how to cope with suffering, because really each one of us suffers in our lives, and we face challenges, we face struggles, we face things that just feel like we can't, we can't rise above it. And the Tanya gives us these tools. So this is super exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and read straight from it. And I hope this is inspirational for some of you. Okay, so it says, now the Tanya will teach us a powerful tool to eliminate the negative emotions of sadness and worry. This tool for sadness and worry about general life problems such as issues of health and finance. In section 4, we will deal with sadness prompted by religious matters. So I'm just going to read the English to make this super simple and easy to follow. Now, the following is a prescribed plan to free yourself from any sadness or hint of worry about material things, even in the highly emotive areas of children, health, and livelihood. How amazing. Like the Alter Rebbe knew exactly what resonates with us so deeply, what feels most challenging. Everyone knows the teaching of our sages of blessed memory. A person is obligated to bless God for misfortune in the same way that he blesses God for the good. Wow. In the same exact way. That's, wow, very incredible. And according to the Talmud, this means you should accept misfortune joyously with the same joy you would have for good, which is open and manifest. The Tanya takes for granted here that the reader believes in hashgacha pratis, divine providence, that everything happens for a reason and is divinely created by God for our best, that everything is orchestrated by God, so it must be good, even if it doesn't appear so in our human eyes. Well, everything is good at some level. We do not always perceive it. The good may be either open and manifest, something which we can appreciate as good in the here and now, or a good which to mortal eyes remains hidden. The Talmud suggests that we should joyously accept an occurrence that we can perceive as open and manifest good, misfortune, as if we had seen the value in it. Since God allowed it to happen, it must be for the good. And I can't tell you how big of a transformation this is when you allow yourself to step into this space. And this is really an inner work piece. This is really like the Tanya is teaching us straight here, the biggest, most transformative tool that I have yet encountered to really, really make a difference. Kigam zu l'taiva, right? Everybody knows this phrase. The reason being because even this apparently bad occurrence is for the good too. Though this fact is not clear or discernible with our mortal eyes. The above represents normative rabbinical theology. Now the Tanya adds an additional insight based on the Kabbalah. Because this apparent misfortune stems from the unmanifest world, which is above the manifest world. Wow, that's very interesting. The higher unmanifest world contains a greater good, but one which cannot be appreciated by us here in this manifest world. You ought to accept seemingly unfortunate occurrences joyously amid the awareness that paradoxically, they are an expression of a higher source, which was unable to express itself in this world as something positive. This is so fascinating. So my understanding is that it's saying that the things that are unmanifested in this world, the things that appear to be negative, are actually from a higher source and even for even greater good. And this is something I've spoken about before. I really have seen this in my life. I really have seen where things that have felt so traumatic and so painful in the moment, when I was able to heal from it and look back at it, I realized that it changed me in ways that, had it not happened, I could never have grown into that woman. So this resonates with me very deeply. The manifest world is represented by the last two letters of Vav and Hey, and the manifest world is represented by the first two letters of Yud Hey, wow, of God's name. So the unmanifest world is actually by the second two letters, the last two letters, versus the manifest world. This is what we see. The revealed good is from the first two letters. Now, the four letters of God's name are subdivided by Kabbalists into two groups, indicating that God can be experienced in two ways. The last two letters, Vav, refer to God as he is experienced in the manifest world. The Vav, which is a vertical line, symbolizes the journey downwards from unmanifest to manifest. And the Hey, which extends fully in both vertical and horizontal directions, represents the diverse polarization of the manifest world. This is so interesting. There's a Hasidic thought that I'm going to share with you. The manifest world is plagued by polarity. North only exists because of south, light because of dark, sweetness because of bitterness, and pleasure because of pain. You might like the idea of a life which is totally devoid of pain and only offers pleasure, but that's actually impossible, because in the manifest world, the two experiences are interrelated. They're two ends of the same pole. If there was no pain, there would be no pleasure. And this is something that I've really seen for myself in my own life. And it's something that I love to teach people, is that we really, really must feel our negative emotions. We really must feel our pain in order to really experience pleasure. In the unmanifest world, there's only one reality, essence, or you might simply call it being. It's just God himself before he manifested the dualities that we are familiar with. When you shift your consciousness to be aligned with the unmanifest world, your priority is not whether you're feeling pain or pleasure. What matters is that you're experiencing God. Wow, this is incredible. Pain may be unpleasant, but ultimately, it's also an expression of God. The shift in consciousness necessary to align yourself with the unmanifest world would be impossible if you didn't have Chachma in your soul. Chachma gives you the ability to look beyond your immediate experience and be totally open to something beyond. In this case, it enables you to look beyond your personal preference for pleasure over pain and focus on the transpersonal reality of being connected with the unmanifest world. That's far more precious than anything in the manifest world has to offer. So wow, the Tanya is saying that we should align our consciousness to just want to be connected with God. And it's such an amazing thing, because we've learned, right, that our soul is here in this world, literally to fulfill its mission, to be connected with God, to do Torah, to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, to bring more light into this world. And yet we all get sidetracked by all the different realities. So it takes inner work. To the Tanya saying is that, we should really work on our consciousness and and align it to just wanting to be connected with God. And as it said earlier in Tanya's, every time we do a mitzvah, every time we do a good deed, we're literally connecting with God's essence himself. So we're supposed to transform our consciousness to just want to connect with that. And this is really fascinating and amazing. Okay, now going back to God's name, Hashem's name, the first two letters Yud Hey refer to God as he is unmanifest. This is expressed by the formless Yud, which is typographically is just a dot, devoid of any polarity. And this is the meaning of the verse, fortunate is the man whom you, O God, admonish, where God's name in the verse is spelled Yud-K, signifying the unmanifest. When you experience pleasure, it can be harder to connect with God because your own enjoyment draws you away from God consciousness. Pain and admonishment, on the other hand, force you to shift your consciousness toward the unmanifest and to forget about yourself a fortunate predicament. This is so interesting because it's so true. When you're struggling and in a very painful space, it literally forces you to connect with Hashem in the deepest way, because there's no other way to get through something like that. Therefore, our sages of blessed memory taught that those who love him are like the sun going out in its strength. Refers to those who happily accept suffering. This verse in Judges, cited by the Talmud, is at first glance elusive. What does happily accepting suffering have to do with the sun going out in its strength? And how is it connected with the experience of love, those who love him? Because this happy accepting of suffering comes from a love, a closeness to Hashem that surpasses anything in this world. As the verse states, for experiencing your kindness is better than worldly life. And if closeness with Hashem is what matters to you, then it is to be found with more dignity and to an immeasurably greater extent in the unmanifest world. The unmanifest precedes the manifest and transcends it. If you want to be closer to God, then you would prefer a connection with the unmanifest, even if it is painful. So, really shifting your consciousness to understand that every single thing is Hashem and every single thing is for our best, even if we can't see it with our human mortal eyes. The unmanifest precedes the manifest and transcends it. If you want to be closer to God, then you would prefer a connection with the unmanifest, even if it is painful. So I just repeated that. My apologies. For in the unmanifest world, there his strength is hidden, and he sits in secrecy on high. His presence is more powerful. That is why through happily accepting suffering, you will merit to experience in the future the sun going out in its strength, which refers to the sun emerging from its protective filter, which screens the sun in this world, whereas in the future, the sun will appear out of its filter. Wow, that's very fascinating. When you happily accept your suffering, you start to see the sun starts to shed its layers, and you're able to see it without its protective filter. That's so fascinating. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert in this, but I assume that's referring to Mashiach's times, or if you're able to step into a level of consciousness and you're able to start seeing that manifest, seeing the good in your life, that I could tell you is something that has happened for me personally. As I've worked very hard in stepping into this, I'm still a process, growth in process. That wasn't the right way to say it, but I'm still in the process of growing constantly. But I do see that as I've stepped into it, I am able to see it and experience it and notice it more, that the challenges are really for my best. And I have a lot more to grow. As the Talmud states, in the world that is coming, there will be no purgatory. Rather, there will be no hell. Rather, the blessed Holy One will bring the sun out of its filter. Wow. So this is where it's referring to. My apologies. This is where it's referring to in the world to come. And through it, the righteousness will be healed and the wicked will be judged, punished. In other words, the removal of the sun from its filter is a metaphor for a disclosure of the unmanifest world. This answers our earlier question, why the Talmud cites a verse about the sun going out in its strength in reference to those who happily accept suffering. The sun going out in its strength is a metaphor for the spiritual disclosure of the unmanifest world in the future. By aligning your consciousness now to the unmanifest world, through transcending your personal experience of suffering, you make yourself ready for the future when God will unveil a presently unmanifest world for all kind. The presently unmanifest will then shine and illuminate profusely and intensely to all those who took refuge in God. In the current era, who had previously aligned themselves with the consciousness of the unmanifest by happily accepting suffering. And this experience will be possible only for those who retreat in his shade. Now in the current era, they find God even in the darker experiences of pain and suffering. The shadow of Chachma, finding God in the shadow of suffering, is made possible by using your Chachma, by using your mind, as explained above, which allows you to connect with God's Chachma in the unmanifest world. Referring to the unmanifest quality of shade as opposed to the manifested light of over goodness. Thus, the Baal Shem Tov once told an individual, accept with love everything that comes upon you in this world, and then you will be able to have both this world and the world that is coming. And this should already be enough for the intelligent reader. This is so fascinating because literally the Baal Shem Tov is saying is that when you accept your suffering, right, accept with love, accept that everything that comes to the world, you'll be able to have this world and the world that is coming. You're going to be able to have what you want in this world. That's like really, really very powerful. And I'll share something that I've read more than one time from the Bava Rebbe, which I'm going to kind of connect here, is when you visualize and you start to see the positive as coming for you already, when you have really, really strong faith in Hashem, knowing that He's going to provide you with what you need and what you want, and you really see it in your mind's eye, it happens much faster. And this is the law of attraction that everyone speaks about in the secular world. It's literally from Torah. It's literally like, yes, we are supposed to see Hashem creating the absolute best for us while noticing that the challenges are really there for our best. And I think that when you fuse the two of really visualizing and knowing, but visualizing from a state of like, believing that Hashem is giving it to you, believing that God is creating it for you. And not only is He creating it for you, but He's creating the very, very best reality for you that's even like greater than you ever imagined, while noticing the struggle. I please do not pretend the struggle doesn't exist, because that is not healthy. That is not going to bring you to a higher consciousness level. You have to notice as a human being, your mind has to process the negative. But when you view it through the lens that this is the best for you, that's when you're able to transcend that space internally, and you're able to upgrade your consciousness to be like, yes, this is painful. Yes, but I know that this is for the best. I know that Hashem created the refuah before the makkah. Hashem created the cure before the illness. And I know this is going to be resolved in the best way possible, and even better than I ever imagined. And so when you fuse these two together, you literally start to see miracles open up before your very eyes. It's really, really amazing. I'm going to share one more practical lesson, and then this is the end of the Tanya for today. Even misfortunes in financial health or family matters will not make you sad when understanding that they come from God. You do not resist them and accept them willingly. Suffering, in fact, connects you to God more deeply, as it rips through directly to the unmanifest world. This is so fascinating that suffering rips, when you suffer and you have to connect with Hashem, God, in the strongest way possible, just to be able to stay above ground, just to be able to like get through it. The reason that you're so connected with God is because it rips through the manifest world into the unmanifest world, and you're connecting with a higher level of Hashem, of God. And it's so beautiful and so fascinating, and that's truly where the biggest growth happens. And it's an amazing thing for me to be learning this straight from the Tanya, the practical Tanya by Rabbi Chaim Miller, because this is something that I've literally seen in my life. I've literally studied in so many different forms, and I've learned this from so many mentors who have given classes like this, and I'm so grateful to be able to step into this space and do this myself, to be able to share this with all of you, and just to be able to see this directly from the Tanya is just really, really exceptional for me, and really, really transformative. And I hope it is for you too. Okay, have a wonderful day, and may you see lots of personal blessings in your life, and may you be able to transcend and leap through, upgrade your consciousness to be able to connect with the unmanifest world and the deepest essence of Hashem. Take care.